Hello everyone, this is Sunnybug. Today we're gonna read Anne of Green Gables. Then listen carefully and let's go inside the story. Anne of Green Gables. Chapter 1. Green Gables. Matthew Cuthbert was almost 60 years old. He lived with his sister, Marilla, on their farm on Prince Edward Island. Marilla was 5 years younger than him. They were both tall and thin with dark hair. Their farmhouse, Green Gables, was a lovely tall house with a green roof. It was near the town of Abernley. One afternoon, Matthew drove to the train station. He was wearing his best clothes and was very excited. "Has the Byfleet train arrived yet?" Matthew asked the station master. "Yeah, I came half an hour ago," said the station master, "and there's a girl waiting for you on the platform." "A girl?" said Matthew. "But I came for a boy, not a girl." Matthew went up to the little girl, but he was too shy to speak. The girl was about 11 with a small, freckly face. Her hair was red in long braids. She looked at him with large, green eyes. "Are you Matthew Cuthbert from Green Gables?" she asked in a high, sweet voice. "I'm very happy to come and live with you." Matthew didn't know what to say. He could not tell her he was expecting to meet a boy. "Oh, well," said Matthew, "let's go home." He thought Marilla could explain the mistake to her. He took the girl to his cart and drove home. "My parents died when I was a baby," said the girl. "I've always been poor and haven't got any beautiful dresses, but I just imagine that I'm wearing the most beautiful dress and a big hat with flowers on it. Then I'm happy. Do you imagine things sometimes?" "Well, I don't," said Matthew. "Am I talking too much? Please tell me. I can stop if necessary." Matthew smiled at her and said, "You can keep talking. I like to listen to you." Matthew was surprised that he enjoyed the journey home. When they arrived at Green Gables, Marilla was waiting for them at the door. "Matthew, who is she?" she asked. "Where's the boy?" "There wasn't a boy," said Matthew. "The orphanage made a mistake." The girl looked at Marilla and burst into tears. "You don't want me because I'm not a boy," she cried. "Nobody ever wanted me." "There's no need to cry," said Marilla. "Yes, there is," said the girl. "This is the worst thing that ever happened to me." "Don't cry any more," said Marilla. "You can stay here just for tonight. Now, what's your name?" "Will you please call me Cordelia?" asked the girl. "Cordelia? Is that your name?" said Marilla. "No, but it's a very elegant name," said the girl. "I'd like to imagine that my name is Cordelia because my real name is Anne Shirley. It's not a very interesting name, is it?" Marilla looked at Anne and sighed. When Anne was in bed, Marilla and Matthew sat at the table. "We need a boy," said Marilla. "A boy can help you with your work. We should send her back tomorrow." "But Marilla, she's a nice little girl," said Matthew, "and she wants to stay." "So, do you want to keep her?" asked Marilla sharply. "We can give her a good home," said Matthew. "But we don't need a girl," said Marilla. "You're right, Marilla," said Matthew, "but perhaps she needs us, and she can help you with the housework. I can get a boy from the village." Marilla thought for a while. Then she said, "All right, Matthew, she can stay." Matthew smiled and said, "We should be kind to her. I think she needs a lot of love." Chapter 2. Anne Finds a Home. Next morning Anne woke up early. A flood of sunshine poured into the room. She slowly looked around the room. "Oh, I'm in Green Gables," said Anne. "This is a beautiful place. I really want to live here." At the breakfast table, Marilla said, "Well, Matthew and I decided to adopt you, but we want you to promise to be a good girl." Suddenly Anne started to cry. Why are you crying, child? Asked Marilla. I'm crying because I'm so happy, sobbed Anne. I really like it here. Everything is so beautiful, thank you. Anne stopped crying and asked, Can I call you Aunt Marilla? I've never had any family, so I'd like to imagine you're my mother's sister. I'm not your aunt, said Marilla. You can call me Marilla. Everyone else does. Anne was quiet for a short time. Then she said, Marilla, will I ever have a best friend in Avonlea? Diana Barry is about your age, said Marilla. She's visiting her grandmother now, but when she comes back, we'll visit her. Diana, what a beautiful name, said Anne. One day Rachel Lynde came to visit. She knew everything that happened in Avonlea. I've heard something surprising about you and Matthew, Marilla, said Mrs. Lynde. Is it true that you adopted a girl? Yes, she's clever and interesting, said Marilla. Do you want to meet her? I'll call her. A few minutes later, Anne ran into the house. Well, they didn't pick you for your looks, did they? Said Mrs. Lynde. She turned to Marilla. She's so skinny, and look at those prickles and that hair red as carrots. Anne's face became very red. You're a rude, mean woman, and I hate you, cried Anne. You've hurt my feelings. I'll never forgive you. Annie burst into tears and ran out. Oh, what a terrible child, said Mrs. Lynde. You will have a lot of trouble with her. You don't have said those things about her, Rachel, said Marilla. It was rude. I'm surprised that you're defending her, said Mrs. Lynde. I'm just sorry for you, that's all. Marilla went to talk to Anne. You can punish me as you want, said Anne. You can throw me in a deep, dark prison, but I won't apologize. We don't put people in deep, dark prisons in Avonlea, said Marilla. But you will have to apologize to Mrs. Lynde. I won't, said Annie. I'll stay in my room forever. Stay here if you want to, said Marilla. But you said you tried to be a good girl while you lived at Green Gables. That night, Matthew quietly went to Anne's room. Anne was sitting sadly by the window. Anne, he said, why don't you say you're sorry? Both you and Mrs. Lynde said things you shouldn't have. I want you to learn how to forgive. I was very angry before, said Annie, but I'm sorry now. I'll apologize if you want me to. Yes, do please, said Matthew. It's lonely downstairs without you. The next day, Anne and Marilla visited Mrs. Lynde's house. Oh, Mrs. Lynde, said Annie, falling on her knees. I've come to say how sorry I am. Please say you forgive me. I'll be sad all my life if you don't. Of course I forgive you, said Mrs. Lynde kindly. And I hope you forgive me too. Oh, yes, Mrs. Lynde, said Anne with a bright smile. Thanks so much. Oh, isn't it a lovely morning? Mrs. Lynde, may I go and play in your garden? It's so beautiful. Annie ran up to play. She's an odd little thing, said Mrs. Lynde, but I think you might enjoy raising her, Marilla. Yes, it will certainly be interesting with Anne, said Marilla. A few days later, Marilla gave Anne 3 new plain dresses. Get dressed now, Anne, said Marilla. We're going to the Barrys' house. You will meet Diana. Mrs. Barry met Marilla and Anne at the door of her house. Anne saw a girl her own age sitting in the kitchen. It was Diana. She had long dark hair and bright eyes. Mrs. Barry told them to play in the yard. They went outside. Diana, said Anne, do you think we could be best friends? I think so, said Diana. I'm glad you lived at Green Gables. It would be nice to have someone to play with. Will you promise to be my best friend forever and ever? Asked Danny. I will like having you as my best friend, said Diana. Before long, they were spending all their free time together. Chapter 3. Anne's School Days. Soon it was September and time for school. Anne was nervous and excited. On the way to school, Diana said to Anne, Today you will meet Gilbert Blythe. He's very good-looking and clever. I'm not interested in boys, said Anne. In the classroom, Gilbert looked at Anne. He wanted to talk to her, but she was looking out the window. She was far away in the world of her imagination. Gilbert pulled her red braids and whispered, "Carrots, carrots." "What? You horrible boy!" cried Anne. "I hate you!" She picked up her book and hit Gilbert on the head. The teacher, Mr. Phillips, saw Anne hit Gilbert with her book. "And Shirley," he asked, "why did you do that?" Anne said nothing. "I'm sorry, Mr. Phillips," said Gilbert. "It was my fault. I was rude to her." But the teacher did not listen to Gilbert. He made Anne stand in the front of the room. Anne stood for the rest of the day with an angry face. When school was over, Gilbert tried to apologize, but Anne did not look at him. "I'll never forgive him," she said to Diana. "I will never look at him or speak to him." The next day, some children were playing outside at lunchtime. They were late for the afternoon class. Anne ran into the classroom just after the teacher. "You're late, Anne," said Mr. Phillips. "You won't sit with Diana today. Go and sit next to Gilbert." Anne's face went white. She didn't move. "What are you doing?" asked the teacher. "Didn't you hear me?" "Yes, sir," said Anne, and sat down next to Gilbert. "I hate Mr. Phillips," she said over and over. At the end of the class, Anne packed all her books. "I am leaving the school," said Annie firmly. "I will never come back." That evening, Marilla went to Mrs. Lynde's house. "I heard about Anne's trouble in school," said Mrs. Lynde. "I don't know what to do," said Marilla. "She says she won't go back to school. Please give me some advice." "Don't worry, Marilla," said Mrs. Lynde. "I raised 10 children. Just let her stay home. Soon she will want to go back to school." Marilla did nothing, and Anne stayed at home. Diana was Anne's only friend during those days. One evening, Marilla found Anne crying in the kitchen. "What's the matter, child?" she asked in surprise. "I love Diana so much," said Anne. "I can't live without her. But what will I do when she marries? I can't imagine her wedding in the church. She will be in a long white dress. After the wedding, her husband will take her away. Oh, I will never see her again." Marilla tried not to laugh, but she couldn't stop herself. "What an imaginative girl you are," she cried. Suddenly, Anne felt foolish. A few days later, Anne decided to go back to school. The new school year began. Mr. Phillips left and a new teacher came. Anne loved her new teacher, Miss Stacy. One day, Anne came home with some exciting news. "We will be putting on a play at Christmas time," she said. "I will play the Fairy Queen. I've already learned some of my lines." Matthew noticed that all the girls wore pretty dresses with puffed sleeves, all except Anne. Her dresses were very plain, and she always wore an apron. So he went to Mrs. Lynde and asked her to make a pretty dress for Anne. Mrs. Lynde was good at making dresses. She promised to make a beautiful new dress. Matthew gave Annie her new dress on Christmas morning. It was light red with a silk hairband. Annie burst into tears. "Don't you like it?" asked Matthew. "Oh," said Anne, "it's the most beautiful dress I've ever seen, and it has puffed sleeves. It's perfect. Thank you, Matthew." She drew her arms around Matthew's neck and kissed his cheek. Marilla had tears in her eyes too. On the night of the school play, Anne wore her pretty new dress. She stood on stage and spoke her lines confidently. She looked as beautiful as any of the girls. On April morning, Marilla arrived home and found Annie lying on her bed. "Oh," cried Anne, "don't look at me. My life is ruined." "What's the matter?" asked Marilla. Then she noticed something strange about Anne's hair. "Oh, Anne, what have you done? Your hair is green." "I bought a bottle of hair dye from a man who came to the door," said Anne. He said my hair would be black, but it turned green. What should I do?" Marilla washed Anne's hair again and again, but the color didn't change. Anne stayed home for a week and washed her hair every day. It was still green. Finally, Marilla said she would have to cut it all off. Anne was left with very short hair. Next day at school, everyone talked about Anne's new hairstyle. Only Diana knew her secret. This summer, Anne and her friends were playing in an old boat. "Today, let's imagine I'm a prisoner," said Anne. "I'll escape by boat. I will lie down in it, and the river will carry it down to the bridge. You can meet me there." The boat began to carry Anne down the river. But suddenly Anne felt something was wrong. Water was coming in very fast through a hole in the bottom of the boat. Anne looked around and caught a branch of the river. When Anne was about to fall, Gilbert came in his boat. "Anne, what are you doing there?" he asked, and helped Annie into his boat. When the boat reached the shore, Anne began walking away. "Anne, wait," said Gilbert. "I'm sorry I called you cowards. Can't we be friends?" Anne almost said yes, but she remembered how angry she was with him all those years. "No," she said coldly, "I can never be your friend, Gilbert Blythe." "I'll never ask you again, Anne Shirley," said Gilbert. He began rowing away. Annie should have been happy, but instead she wanted to cry. Chapter 4. A Year of Changes. One night, Marilla told Anne that she had talked to Miss Stacy. "Anne, Miss Stacy said you were doing well in school," said Marilla. "She wants you to study for the exam for Queen's College in Charlottetown. If you pass the exam and study at Queen's, you can become a teacher." "Marilla, I'd love to be a teacher," said Anne happily. So every afternoon, Anne and some of the students stayed late at school. Miss Stacy helped them prepare for the exam. Diana didn't want to go to college, so she went home early. Gilbert stayed and studied with Anne, but he didn't even look at her. Anne was surprised at how much he'd accept her. She knew she should forgive him, and if he asked again, she would say yes. One afternoon, Mrs. Lynde visited Marilla. "Your Anne is a big girl now," said Mrs. Lynde. "She's taller than you." "Yes, it is," said Marilla, "and she has grown into a nice young woman. Matthew and I are so proud of her." "And she is very beautiful," said Mrs. Lynde. "Those beautiful green eyes and the red-brown hair. She is a really pretty girl and make all the other girls look so plain." "I can't imagine my life without her," sighed Marilla. Later, Matthew saw his sister crying in the kitchen. "What's the matter?" he asked. "I was thinking about Anne," said Marilla. "I'll miss her when she goes away to college." "But she can come home on the weekends," said Matthew. Matthew hadn't noticed how much Anne had grown. To him, Anne would always be the small girl he had brought home from the train station. "I'll miss her too," said Matthew. Time passed quickly. Anne studied hard. In June, she took the important examination. Anne waited anxiously for the results. 3 weeks later, Diana ran into the kitchen at Green Gables, carrying a newspaper. "Look, Anne," she cried. "It's in the newspaper. You are first with Gilbert, out of all the students." Anne took the newspaper and saw her name at the top of the list. For the first time in her life, she could not speak even one word. "I knew you'd do it," said Matthew with a warm smile. "You've done well, Anne," said Marilla. For the next 3 weeks, Anne and Marilla were very busy. Anne knitted new dresses to wear to college. The evening before she left, Anne put on one of her new dresses to show Matthew and Marilla. Marilla watched a happy young face. She remembered a thin little child with her sad eyes and began to cry quietly. "Marilla, why are you crying?" asked Anne. "Oh, I don't know why I'm crying," said Marilla. I was just thinking of you when you were a little girl. Now you're going away. I will be lonely without you. Anne put her arms around Marilla's shoulder. Don't be sad, said Anne. I may be bigger and older now, but I'll always be your little Anne. You and Matthew are my family, and Green Gables is my home. That will never change. For the next year, Anne was busy with her school life at Queen's College. Gilbert was also at Queen's, and sometimes Anne saw him, but she didn't want to speak to him first. Gilbert never looked at her. At the end of the college year, there were examinations. Anne studied hard for them. She wanted to go to Redmond College. I'd love to get a high score, she thought. Or if I win the Avery Prize, I can get a 4-year scholarship to Redmond College. The Avery Prize was for the student who was best at English essay writing. Anne waited for news of the examination. Finally, the day arrived. It's Gilbert! He has a high score, shouted a boy. He gets the gold medal! Anne was disappointed, but then she heard someone shout, And Shirley has won the Avery Prize! All the girls came up to Anne. We are really proud of you, Anne, they said. Chapter 5. Back at Green Gables. Anne came back to Green Gables with the good news, but she felt something was wrong. Matthew looked much older than before. What's wrong with Matthew? Anne asked Marilla. His heart, that's the problem, answered Marilla. And you don't look well either, said Anne. I've always had bad headaches, said Marilla. I must see the doctor soon, and there's another thing. Did you hear the news about the church bank? Yes, I heard it's in trouble, replied Anne. That's right, said Marilla. Well, all of our money is in that bank. I think Matthew has been worried about it. The next morning, Matthew received the letter. Marilla saw his face turn pale as he read it. Are you all right, Matthew? She cried. Suddenly, he fell to the ground. Anne and Marilla called the doctor, but it was too late. Matthew was dead. It was a heart attack, said the doctor. Did he have any bad news lately? Yes, he got a letter this morning, cried Anne. Oh, Marilla, the letter says the church bank closed down. All the customers lose their money. Everyone in Avonlea felt sorry about Matthew's death. Anne couldn't stop crying. It's no use crying, said Marilla quietly. He can't come back to us. Now we'll have to learn to live without him, Anne. A few days later, Mrs. Lynde came to Green Gables. I heard that Gilbert is going to a teacher at Avonlea, she said. That's so good for him, said Marilla. But Anne will go to Redmond College soon. I will miss her. The next day, Marilla visited the doctor. What did the doctor say? Asked Anne. He said my eyes are bad, said Marilla. I must wear glasses and then I won't have headaches. If I'm not careful, I'll be blind in 6 months. Anne was shocked. She couldn't say anything. I think I should sell Green Gables, sobbed Anne. You're going to college. I can't run this place alone. That night, Anne thought for a long time about what to do. Next morning, Anne told Marilla what she had decided. We must keep Green Gables because it's our home, said Anne. I'm not going to Redmond. No, cried Marilla. You always wanted to go to Redmond. But now I want to stay with you here at Green Gables, said Anne. It's more important than anything else. I will teach in one of the village schools near here. Marilla tried not to cry, but she couldn't stop her tears. A few days later, Mrs. Lynde came to visit. Did you hear about Gilbert? She asked. He decided not to teach at Avonlea. Why? Asked Anne. He heard that you wanted to stay with Marilla, said Mrs. Lynde. So he gave up his job. He will teach at another school. Oh, it's so kind of him to give up his job, said Anne. Later that day, Anne saw Gilbert walking down the hill. Anne stopped and said softly, Hello, Gilbert. He stopped and looked at her in surprise. I want to thank you, Gilbert, said Anne. You gave up your teaching job for me. That was really sweet. Thank you very much. I'm happy to help you, Anne, said Gilbert. Are we going to be friends now? Can you forgive me for calling you carrots? I forgave you a long time ago, said Anne, smiling. I'm sure we're going to be very good friends, said Gilbert. May I walk you home? Marilla looked at Anne curiously as he entered the kitchen. Was it Gilbert who took you home? She asked. You look happy, Anne. Yes, Marilla, said Anne happily. Gilbert and I have been good enemies, but we decided to be good friends. I think life is going to be good for all of us. You and I have each other, and we will keep our Green Gables. That night, Anne sat at her window for a long time. She thought about how much her life had changed since she came to Green Gables. Once she was alone and unloved. Now she had a home and knew how it felt to love and be loved. Anne breathed a deep sigh of happiness. The end. But wait, you need to learn Forth's own background of Anne and Green Gables. It has been more than 100 years since Luce Maud Montgomery, the author of Anne of Green Gables, created Anne, but she is still one of the most popular and beloved characters in literature. Due to Anne's popularity, every year thousands of people visit the small town on Prince Edward Island in Canada, where Green Gables is located. In real life, Green Gables was the home of the cousins of Montgomery's grandfather, and Montgomery spent a lot of time there in her childhood. Visitors can go into the house, which has a green roof, just like in the story, and see Anne's room on the second floor. Also, people can see an audiovisual presentation introducing the story of the house and the life and works of Montgomery. If you're a big fan of Anne, it is worth visiting Green Gables, where her lively and warm spirit seems to come alive. The end.